Support Center. I'm going to be talking about the domestic violence law in Armenia, which in fact there is no law. I'm going to talk about the process that Armenia has gone through to draft the law and where we are now, what we're doing for the future. We all said a lot about domestic violence. It's more or less the same in all our countries. Why it happens, why the women don't go to the police, the stigma, the shame, the victimization. What happened in Armenia is in 2007, an NGO, the Women's Rights Center, which you might know, they started drafting the law. The domestic violence law was drafted by a working group consisting of international experts, national experts, lawyers, NGOs, participants from the Ministry of Justice of Armenia, participants of the Ministry of Social Affairs and Labor of Armenia, and the police. So it's a huge working group. They worked a lot on it, and finally, when the law reached the government, during these discussions, it was shut down. It was not passed, and it was called, the legal term that the government used was shelved, which they said they didn't reject it, but they didn't accept it either. After this, I would love to have it because I don't know. So, so when the first time we didn't manage to pass the law, we started like a second wave. We started working on it to make changes. The changes that we had to make to the first draft was recommendations from the Ministry of Justice. They said that the specific one article in the law, in the draft law, was that if there's domestic violence, the abuser, and you call the police can take the abuser from the home and take him away. It's the restriction order. I'm sure you're all familiar with it. This little article was not in accordance with property law in Armenia, which says that if the abuser, say the man beat his wife, if he is the owner of the property, the apartment, the house they live in, the police has no right to come and take him out of the home, even if it's temporary, even if it's for 72 hours. So a second working group was formed to take out that part of the law, to make amendments, to make changes, and to have a second, more acceptable form of the law to present again. Right now, we're in the phase where this second law, the second draft is going to be presented not through the government, not through ministries, but we are going to try to approach individual members of parliament. We have 131 members of parliament in our National Assembly, in our parliament. A group of NGOs, a lot of us are here today, the Coalition to Stop Violence Against Women. We are actively trying to raise, first of all, public awareness on the issue of domestic violence and the fact that we really need a domestic violence law. And the second leg is to actually promote it, to actually take it to the parliament, to talk to individual MPs. So we have, in the upcoming 16 days of activism against gender-based violence, we have a series of events, all these NGOs in Armenia. The first one is going to be a march on November 25th, the day it starts. This march is going to take 131 copies of the new draft law, and we're going to take this to the parliament. We're going to walk through the streets, raise awareness, take all of that to the parliament and say, here you go. This is for you to read. This is the law. These are the justifications of why we need a law. And we want to meet with you, any one of you who is willing to meet us and talk to us. This is our plan. I'll see what I missed. Maybe I missed something. I said this. I didn't talk about this on purpose because you all know all our countries have national commitments, action plans, we all have international obligations. Unfortunately, these are all good on paper, but when when it came time to, according to our national action plan, to have a domestic violence law in place by the end of 2015, unfortunately, we don't see how that's happening. So I'm going to put emphasis on this, no political will. However you try, if there's no political will, especially in countries like ours, it's very hard to get your point across, even if it's something as threatening to people's lives as domestic violence. So when we're talking to politicians, when we're talking to police, when we're talking to anyone who is in power, who's a policymaker, decision maker, we tell them that this is a social problem. This is a problem that, at this point, Armenians, all of us, we have to get it in our head that it's not a family problem. It shouldn't stay behind closed doors. It's not something that friends and relatives can deal with. It's something that has to come out in the public. We have to talk about it. We have to stop being ashamed of having a problem like this. So all this, in our opinion, the organizations who work to promote the law use this as an advocacy tool. I won't go into detail on what the law does. It's very similar to the Georgian law, domestic violence law. We even had experts, experts in the domestic violence sphere in Georgia visit Armenia to talk to us, to talk to our ministry representatives, our police representatives. So we have this dialogue going on. It would be great if we had it with Azerbaijan too, to have like a three-way South Caucasus platform, but we'll go with this one for now. Yeah, it's all very similar, that's why I'm not going to go into it.
It's just not working.
So the challenges that we have, I'm going to start with the one you mentioned, that it's not working. Sometimes our politicians say that, well, look at Georgia, they have problems with their law. But the only answer we can give to this is that you have to start from somewhere. You have to have the legal framework, the basis, you have to have the law, and then you have to work your way to improve it, to make it better, to make it work. And of course, the law will give a mechanism to all the other structures, police, ministries, social workers, to come together and form that support group for the victims. Another problem we've been facing that Anush talked about a lot is the hate speech and the attacks we're getting as women's organizations. As individuals, as activists, as feminists, as NGO representatives, even talking about domestic violence and demanding a law has become something that we've been called traitors of the nation, that we've been called, I don't know, any negative thing you can imagine. And this is a huge obstacle for us because society on its own was already not happy about talking about domestic violence. It's something that's just not in our mindset. It's a family, closed thing for us in our mentality. So now when some feminist organizations are coming out and talking about it, showing statistics that 11 women died just this year, it's hard for the people to hear. And when you have extremist groups saying that these organizations who want a domestic violence law, they're going to come into your home, take your children, get you divorced, put you on the streets, it's very easy for the people, just regular citizens, to be afraid, to be scared of what might come next. So that's a huge issue we have to face, and we're still trying to find ways to strategies to tackle that, the extremist groups. I talked about low awareness of society. All our street actions, brochure, everything we have in Armenia in this field is meant to raise awareness on the fact that A, there is domestic violence, because a lot of times people say, well, that doesn't happen in Armenia, maybe somewhere else, or that doesn't happen in my family, maybe somewhere else. We try to get them to understand that it's a global issue, it can happen to anyone. The second little pocket of awareness raising is to tell them that unless we have a legal framework, unless the police Unless you call the police, nothing can happen. If you don't speak out, if you don't act, you're going to stay in the same situation. The promises that have been made by decision makers, our government, has been confusing. We do work with the police. We work with the Social Affairs Ministry, who deals with these issues. We're in very good partnership, I would say, us, our NGOs. But at the same time, it remains on an individual level. For example, our organization has a memorandum of understanding with the police. That's great. Since we don't have the law, we can work with them like this. But it can't stay on that level. We need a global thing for all organizations, for all simple citizens to be able to get help, to be able to get even information. This very final one, which is very important, if the second draft law is when this second draft law is presented, if everything is good, it's the perfect law. We're afraid that it might have the obstacle of we don't have enough money in the budget. This is always a threat. This is always something that especially NGOs have to deal with. But this is why we've thought of doing a nationwide research in Armenia that will bring up the cost of domestic violence, how much it costs the government to have victims of domestic violence, versus how more inexpensive passing a law would be. Currently, there's only one shelter in Armenia. Our organization keeps it open thanks to grants, thanks to donations, and the police send victims to us. The ministry sends victims to us. Local governments send victims to us. But it's a small shelter. If one day that shelter closes, the entire country is not going to know where to send these domestic violence women and children. So the costs for not having a law are higher than having a law. This is going to be our argument. But we still need to go into this dialogue. Our politicians haven't really had domestic violence as a priority. They haven't really come to talk to us. They haven't come to the table to discuss it with us. I'm finished. If you have questions, let me know after or now.
Я хотела попросить, чтобы вы просто тремя предложениями на русском для тех, кто не понял английский, сказали основная причина, почему закон, который подготовлен по экспертизе до сих пор,
Can Tatvik answer, because we work on it together and Tatvik can answer.
Основная причина была, во-первых, в том, что, конечно, все понимают, что если будет закон о домашнем насилии, должно быть некая часть бюджета идти каждый год для этого, чтобы как бы предоставлялись какие-то государственные поддержка, программы для защиты женщин, пострадавших от домашнего насилия. И еще там был пункт, то, что есть в ваших законах, то, что насильника убирают из дома, как вы говорили, если полиция пришла и увидела эту ситуацию. У нас очень долго были насчет этого такие серьезные конфликты, потому что у нас, если собственник дома мужчина, как бы это прищемление его права собственности, если его выгоняют из дома. И у нас полиция не имеет такого права делать это. Но там у нас было это, потому что на самом деле это возможно решить, поскольку у нас полиция имеет право на 3 дня до 72 часа взять его как бы к себе, пока суд примет какое-то решение насчет уже потом, то есть с помощью суда это возможно было сделать, но очень долго было конфликтов насчет этого тоже.
Social Affairs Ministry is trying to pass a new law, the Social Assistance Law.
И у нас это Министерство труда и социальной защиты. Да, они еще сделали такое-то хитрость, как вы говоря, у них сейчас закон, который уже у нас в парламенте, о социальной поддержке. Они включили домашнее насилие туда, и там есть маленький пункт, всего одно как бы объяснение, что такое домашнее насилие, и пункт, что вот если это, то какие-то